Alright, I'm making this little short video for Jeff, who's having issues with his Nortrac trencher. His boom cylinder's not working. So I'm going to do a short run through of how the hydraulics work. My pump is off at the moment. This is the pressure line. That's your suction going from tank, all supplied to the pump. Once it gets to the pump, when the engine's running, it pressures through this line. Now this line goes to the control valve. When you're not pulling any lever with the engine running, the pressurized fluid makes a loop and goes straight back to this line, which is the return. The return line runs through the filter and into the tank. So there's always some kind of flow of hydraulic fluid on the system. And this is a pressure relief valve. It sets your high end limit, which I don't believe that's your issue, because the rest of your functions are working except for your boom. So with the controls in neutral, pressure comes through, loops around, and goes to return. The spool valve. You see when I move the lever, that one spool drops down, or you push it forward, it raises up. This spool valve is actually two ports. What happens when you pull the boom up, it sends pressure through this bottom line, which if I trace it out, goes to the bottom of my boom cylinder. So when you pull back the spool, this line gets pressure. But not only does the port open to send pressure to that line, another port in this spool opens for the return. Because if you're pressuring fluid in, the fluid on this side of the cylinder has to go back out. If it doesn't go back out, what's going to happen, the cylinder is going to deadhead. It's going to push as hard as it can, it's barely going to move, and it's going to come to a stopping point. That's called deadheading. You may get a ½ inch of movement out of your cylinder, and that's all you're going to get, because this pressure is not going anywhere. So that's why I suggested swap two lines on the control valve. Let's say you take your bucket lines right here, pull these off, you label them so you don't mix them up. You can label like top, bottom, and this like top and bottom, but boom and bucket. You put these two bucket lines in the place of the boom, and the two boom lines in the place of the bucket. The bucket spool is this one for the curl. Once you swap those lines, and when you go to curl the bucket, it should raise the boom up or lower the boom. If swapping those lines, this still does not affect the boom cylinder, then that means you have a cylinder problem and not a control valve problem. But if you swap the lines to the curl and the boom raises up, that means the cylinder is good. And then you're also going to have your bucket lines are now going to be in your boom. Then go ahead and try to work your bucket. When you pull back, it should curl. Push forward, should uncurl. If it does nothing at all, then your problem is in your bank. Your control valve is not sending pressure and bypassing and dumping back the tank, and that would be a problem. But if you put your boom cylinder lines on the bucket, and when you operate the bucket, if the boom still does not work, it's a cylinder problem. If the boom does work, it's going to be a control valve problem. But anytime you send pressure to one side of the cylinder, it has to have somewhere for the other side to go. And there's an adjustable flow control I was telling you about. I'm not entirely sure if you put this on 0, if it locks it. But just make sure yours is not in 0. A good starting point is half the range of motion. I say about 3. That's a good starting point. That controls the speed at which your boom falls. I hope this info helps.